Good morning. Um, I learned something today, and it gave me a bit of an epiphany. So I'm gonna just try to. I'll tell you when I get to the epiphany part, but I'm gonna just walk through a good description of flat Earth geologic science. Um, so in the beginning, God created the Earth, and He put it on a foundation, and it's a round circle with a granite base. Okay, and that's what we call the tectonic plates, or big chunks of granite that were broken up. I'll get to that. So he's got this granite base, and then he put the when he originally made it, it was good. So, and there was no rain and no oceans, and the rivers flowed from the ground and went in four directions. Because underneath of that layer of granite, he had a layer of water, the subterranean water. We still get that for our drinking water. We drill down to small reservoirs of it that are left. Um, so, uh, duh. So you got your layer of granite, and then, okay, so on the top, it was all green with the little bit of rivers, and that's where they say the meteor crater scars. I believe that was where the rivers flowed from the ground. People say that it's where the grounds broke open, or the depths of the sea broke open, and that's where they flowed from. They might have flowed, the rivers might have flowed extra on that day, but I think that those are the scars from the rivers, and they were sealed off in the flood because they would have been covered by extra water on water, so they would just stop flowing because water just finds its own level. It stops flowing once it's level, and then sediment would have filled in the holes, and that's why we get the scars that we see today. But anyway, so when he did do the flood, there's the oceanic trenches. That's what we call them, but it's a big scar that goes right between the continents, and then it goes around the Pacific and through and around the continents on that side. And on a ball Earth, and you can apply this to the ball Earth, the heliocentric science as well, because everything is sound that I'm saying to theirs as well. It's just that the flat Earth part isn't, but the cracks are all that stuff is. Everything else is, and that there is the subterranean waters, and that there is granite there, and that everything's granite and was. Anyways, so once those trenches were made, the granite was split, the trenches broke it open, the water came out. That would have caused, like here, well, that actually, everywhere that there's an oceanic trench, there's a parallel mountain range running right with it all over the earth. So that's where all the mountain ranges popped up at the same time. And which we get earthquakes because we got pieces of granite sitting on top of each other. They would have been pushed on top of each other like that, and they're just slipping a little bit at a time here and there, and more so in certain areas than others. And as we pump things out of the ground, it makes air spots for it to slip too, right? But it's going to naturally slip eventually anyway. But not like we got to worry about that, because the oceanic trench is huge. So it stands to reason that the overlap on the rocks is also huge, and would have to close in the oceanic trench in order to have the great earthquake where the rocks fall off of each other. So I think we're okay. But that also blows away your stupid Pangea theory, because there is a base in the ocean. There's a floor there. Everywhere except for that trench has a plate. So you can't move the continent plate around like that and keep that other, like there's no missing plate for you to do that, for you to shuffle around and move things, move the land masses. But for me to break them open and have things change a little bit, mountain ranges be built. It's perfectly reasonable, logical, and sound. And then when the plates moved, this spot where it broke open would have pushed the water out, but these would have fell down this way. It only stands to reason that's how it would have fell, and that makes our ocean. There's our ocean floor, and then the trench is in the middle where my thumbs are, like that. Boom. And then it fills in with sediment after it ran out of water, and these sealed. Once these hit the bottom of the ocean, the underground ocean, plunk, that sealed it off, so it was stopped the gush. That gush would have been coming out at such a pressure, it would have just been steam. It would have melted rock. It would have made lava. And just coming out of there, just the sheer force and the pressure and the steam would have, and then when it hit the atmosphere, it would have had to come down somewhere. And the north, the magnetic north, would have pulled the molecules of it towards there, and that explains why the mammoths were frozen solid within 3 hours or within 3 hours. They didn't die; they were frozen alive. The only way that happens is it had to be minus 300 degrees. Well, when that mist coming out and that steam coming out of the ground eventually cooled in the atmosphere, it would have made such ice storms and shit that it would have actually been feasible to make the minus 300 degrees that we needed for that. Now, in order for the Earth to be a globe, we'd have to, as we drilled, we'd have to gain temperatures. Every mile we'd gain a degree or something like that. I don't know the math on it, but you gain temperature as you go down, and we don't find that. It gets to 15 degrees and it stays at 15 degrees as far as we've ever gone, and that's that's geothermic energy and stuff like that, and that's how you can keep your house heated and stuff. You drill pillars down deep into the ground, and it's a constant temperature down there, so it stays the constant temperature inside of your house, and you can keep your water at that temperature and keep your house and your heat and your air conditioning, everything, that always stays at 15 degrees. So also that explains why the pyramids are under the ocean, because at the time when they were built, before the flood, there wasn't an ocean. It was just sitting here, and when this happened, and then this happened, it left the pyramids sitting on the off the coast of Florida and off the coast of Newfoundland and stuff in the water, under the ocean. See, it's the only thing that makes any sense. Nothing built them under there. And then, if you know anything about pyramids, they regulate the frequency of the Earth. All of the pyramids exposed and out of the Earth's frequency would have been better. All of that extra green instead of water on top and the water underneath would have increased the pressure and increased the oxygen, which would have caused things to live longer, which is why dinosaurs, right? Because lizards grow their entire life, which is why cavemen, people with this big brow ridge right here, this bone grows for your entire life. If you were to live to be 600 years, you'd have a big caveman brow over your eyebrows, and maybe an elongated skull, because this can also stretch out over long periods of time, they say. I don't know about that. I think it's something to do with the weight of your hair or something. I don't know if I trust that so much, but definitely trust this science. And I trust the lizard science. That's real. That's provable. And so a high oxygen environment. Those lizards would have been living to be 900 years old, the ones that first were made. So yeah, an iguana that old is gonna look like a dinosaur. That's what we would, when we dug it up. And that's why all the dinosaurs are like, oh, well, it's just a big version of the crocodile. Oh, it's just a big version of an iguana. It's just a big version of this or that or whatever. Well, duh, wake the fuck up, dummies. Those things were just living longer and getting huge. So there was a bunch of huge ones. And then the weird ones, like T-Rex and things like that, that was from the Nephilim banging them. going around and sleeping with lizards and making creepy creatures. That's why God wiped out the earth. It was part of it, right? The Nephilim were being made by the angels sleeping with women, but they were the Nephilim children, and the angels were also sleeping with like fish and lizards and cows and goats, and like that's Baphomet, the goat man. Where do you think he came from? He's God. He's the son of one of those fallen angels, and he's probably a high-ranking fallen angel like Satan or somebody. And Satan was super proud of him because he was like intelligent and tough, or what, you know what I mean, like whatever reasons. They were all super proud of their children. They thought they were creator gods because they made these abominations. Anyway, so that's why God wiped the earth out, except he's saving the pure and making the world different and getting rid of the pyramids and getting rid of the hyperbaric chamber type whatever, making mankind a little bit weaker, well, a lot weaker. If we used to live to be 900 years and now we don't. And you can see us getting weaker and weaker generationally. Look at like 3-4 generations ago. All dudes were big burly dudes, and all women were little dainty girls, and now it's going all messy. And that could be a lot with our diet and all the chemicals and shit that we put into ourselves, but our DNA is also getting weaker as we get further from the source, because all things lead towards chaos. That's the law of thermodynamics. And everything in this universe is a closed system, and everything in it is governed by the laws. So you can't step outside of the laws unless you can step outside of the universe. So in order to be created, something had to be outside of it, making the laws. Right? And that's why in books you can find information that, like I was saying yesterday on my other video, I don't know when it'll upload, but that the I lost my train of thought again. Dummy. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so when the trench broke open, piling all that dirt up, making all the fossil record, and then crushing things, making the start of the fossil record, and then the flood happened, sorting everything, shaking everything up, making your layers in the earth that we call the geologic timescale that are all out of fucking order all over the place, layering them all up, putting major pressure on them of a whole ocean of water on top of them, and while the water was still blowing out of the trench and settling everywhere else, it would have gotten close to the trench and just evaporated to steam. Like it wouldn't have been able to assuage and fill that trench in to show the land until the trench stopped blowing. And then even then it would have had to taken a while for all that amount of water to settle down into that trench. But during that time there would have been intense pressure on top of all the things that were starting to settle, which is what makes the fossil record. It's not time, it's pressure, which is also what makes purified rock and coal and all that other stuff. Well, not purified. Purified is conditions. To purify something, it doesn't have to be under pressure. It just has to have certain conditions. And then if you purify, that's why we get like purified rock that would have been like frozen and this and that during the flood, and made that layer, and then we get a layer of coal, and then another layer of purified rock. Just this layer of coal got protected in there quick enough, and then this layer of debris got made into purified stone because it was getting the temperatures and the reactions of whatever was going on at the time above it. And then another layer built on top of that, and that's why you have a single tree running through all of those layers. Otherwise it can't, and thousands and billions and hundreds, we find them all the time running through all the layers, so, or multiple layers at a time. So either the tree's a billion years old or the layers were made really quick. And So I refuse to believe that a tree can live to be billions of years old or tens of thousands of years old at all. Can't. So all of that evidence shows you young Earth, created by God, flooded, made a fossil record, made layers. And then also, if you mix, this is where I learned something. If you mix sulfur, and I forget what the other two things were, I'm not a chemist, but if you mix these three things together and then just sprinkle a little bit of water on them, they actually will erupt, and they'll make a volcanic thing so intense that you can't hold the ball anymore. You have to drop it. It boils until the water's used up. So if those three volatile chemicals were put together and buried during the flood, and then say, I don't know, 100 years later, 1,000 years later, whatever years later, some water makes it into that cavern and touches those chemicals. They're buried under pressure. But they start erupting. They don't really have anywhere to go. They make volcanoes. And we get eruptions, and that's why volcanoes go dead, because eventually they run out of those chemicals. And that's why some keep living and will keep erupting, because it would erupt, seal itself, but still have some of that chemical left in there. So eventually some more water gets in, it erupts again. Eventually some more water gets in and it erupts again. And that's why we get some volcanoes that are very active and some that aren't, right? And and some dormant volcanoes could just still have the chemical there, but just aren't getting the water anymore needed, right? Because they only would have gotten it a couple of times after the flood or whatever in enough quantity to get down there and actually make them erupt. And now we see them and we say, oh, they're billions of years old and they're dormant for thousands of years and all this bullshit. But really, they went off in the flood a couple of times, either used up their things or sealed off and the water went away, so there's no water really getting at it anymore, so it's not enough to make it erupt, not enough to make a vast eruption or whatever. Maybe a trickle of water gets in there, but it would just bubble off on the side, use up that little bit of water very quickly, and then that's the end of that, right? So it's just such a wonderful explanation. The only thing that doesn't get explained is that there's a trail of it underneath of all of our pyramids, right? Like a volcanic line underground that runs all the time. So there must be like a vast amount of that getting fed enough water all the time to continually erupt this whole time. And I think that the pyramids were built on that mineral, not on a volcanic line. I don't think it was volcanic at the time. It was just that mineral, and that mineral probably helped the pyramids to run properly and keep the pyramids maintain frequency. That's what they do of the earth. They actually frequency runs horizontally until it gets to a pyramid on the earth, and then it runs vertically and shoots straight up into space, or whatever you want to call it, to the dome. And things are healthier and have a higher cell count, and people's like chronic pain heals and stuff like that just living around it. All the animal life and plant life all have a higher cell count, and you just tend to get healthier and better if you're around them, even mentally. So that effect was all over the world when all the pyramids were above. But I think that mineral being under there worked to help to spread that across the earth. The earth uses minerals like we use a nervous system. The minerals in the earth communicate to the earth what's going on within itself. It's the earth's communication system. The things that we call metal. And we yank it all out of there for ourselves and fuck up the earth because it can't communicate with itself anymore. But the earth runs very much like a human, just like everything on this, or a deer, or anything. Like we all, it's all sugars, and it's very organic. Everything about like even your garden and stuff like that, where you put manure on, it makes a scar, and then the earth sends sugars to make a scab, just the same way that if you cut yourself, your body does. So we're all one. We're all the same. Even though we're so different, we're all the same. That's how we feel that connection with even a molecule of water. And when we get into water, a lot of us feel better floating in it, because you're communicating with Earth when you're in there. But I just thought it was fascinating to go through that geologic timeline and explain it better than any geologic science textbook could ever even come close. Because they go to these geologic timescale and say that, this is 10,000, this is 20,000 years, this is that, and that's this. And then go dig over here and find it in a different order, and then go dig over here and it's in a third order, and over here it's in a fourth order. They only find it in the correct order like less than 20% of the time. It's random the rest of the time, which is a flood. That's how a flood would drop material. As water's calmed and assuaged and things settled, it would slowly start dropping debris, and different debris would hold other debris, and it would all go down at different rates and cause different layers and different formations in the ground. That's what we see. And then we see other spots where there was no debris because the water dropped quick, or because there was a hill or whatever, and then so it's just the rock underneath the ground or whatever, right? There's just a layer of earth, and then it's the rock. It's not because nothing died there for billions of years. That on the rock, nothing climbed the rock over all the billions of years. No plants ever grew there. So the geologic timescale never happened there. No, it's because the geologic timescale never happened anywhere. It's fucking bullshit. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning a little something today. I hope you learned something. And I hope that it tickles your brain and that you figure something else out, and maybe I'll learn something. Anyway, have a good day.